Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Niche Cast. I am the Diggity Doo Dah Doc, and I am joined here today by the wildcard, the wobbly wildcard, and we are going to crack straight into some Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3, shenanigans. As always, if you're listening to the Niche Cast and you enjoy what you're hearing, what's coming through your two little eardrums, via your audio speaker, however you like to get it, jump on Patreon, support the Niche Cache on Patreon, and yeah, that's just the best way to support the Niche Cache is on Patreon, and there's plenty of different things and bits and pieces that we want to hook our patrons up with. So if you do like what we're doing here at the Niche Cache, jump on Patreon, find the link, it's easy enough. But wildcard, we have Game of Thrones discussion to get into, and the first point I want to raise with you is hello, and then the second point I want to raise with you is neither you or I know you pretty well. We've known each other for a very long time. I know you pretty well, and I know myself pretty well. Neither of us would have done too well in the Battle of Winterfell.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how I would have done there. I think if I was to think of a character who I think my actions in that situation would most align with, I reckon it would be one of two options there. Either Ghost, the direwolf, who was out there growling at the start, seemed to be talking a big game and then just absolutely disappeared for the entire rest of the episode, or Sir Davos, who did the exact same thing. Like, I don't know Sir Davos' track record in these major battles. He just turns up, he says, "I'm no good at fighting, don't look to me, I'm no good at fighting," and he survives every single bloody one of them, and I don't know where he is the whole time. I don't know where he was in Winterfell, but bloody hell, he scraped through somehow. I think that's what I would like to emulate if I was ever in a critical situation like that. So Davos is definitely one to look up to.
Yeah, he's definitely the person for all us plebs.
He's a survivor.
Plebs in terms of fighting. Like, we're not the type of people who are going to be the Dothraki charging into pure darkness. Like, we're not that brave, nor are we that stupid, you know? We know better. But we're also not that combination that's going to be on the front lines, brave, smart, because the humans leaders, they all led from the front, whereas you remember guys like Ramsay Bolton, they led from the back, whereas Jon Snow and his gang, they all lead from the front, so that's admirable, but it's not me. I can't imagine myself in that situation. I don't know where to begin. This Nichecast episode talking about Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3. So what I will admit to something, and then hopefully it will swing into a full-fledged interesting discussion, because I managed to watch the episode a bit later at night, and I was just cruising around on YouTube, kind of passing time, and I saw videos on YouTube of scenes. Like, it's quite cool. You get different scenes that pop up, and it says Arya kills the Night King. So I saw that like a couple hours before I watched, and I was like, oh shit. Well, I didn't watch the video, I just seen the title, and that's all I needed to see. But then when I started watching the episode and Melisandre arrives and she gives Arya this like intense look, the type of look that hasn't been really in Arya's storyline. Like, Melisandre made a key point of staring at Arya, and the director and all those people made a key point of letting that linger. And so I was like, it was kind of cool to have that in the back of mind, that I knew Arya would kill the Night King at some stage. And I'm the type of person, like, I've been known to read the end of a book before I read the start of a book. So I don't really care. I'm not, I prefer to not know how it ends, but I have been weird in a couple of stages, different content I've absorbed. So I'm not like a full hard out, like I don't want to know. Like if I know, it doesn't matter, it's not going to influence my feeling. But having known that and then noting Melisandre's look to Arya, I was like, oh shit. Did you like take any great credence to that scene with Melisandre staring at Arya up on the top of the castle? Or did you kind of overlook it? Was it something that I just picked up because I knew how it ended?
No, I certainly noticed that, and I noticed the camera lingering, and I noticed Arya recognizing old Melisandre and that whole thing, but I sort of have a similar story to you because I also watched it fairly late. I normally do watch The Thrones quite late, and normally there's only been 3 of them in the last 2 years, but whatever. Yeah, I there's always people who go around being like, no spoilers, no spoilers, no spoilers, right? But it's pretty bloody easy to avoid spoilers. Just don't go on the internet in between the hours of the episode airing and you watching it. And, well, go on the internet, but turn off notifications on your phone. Don't go on Twitter. Don't go on the areas where you're gonna see stuff. Like, it's pretty easy to just break that addiction and not look at that stuff. But yeah, I didn't do that. I tried to stay off Twitter, but I was also working at the same time, so I needed to jump on now and then just to get some information. And I did accidentally cast upon some things. I didn't specifically know that Arya would kill the Night King, but I did see all these all these great memes actually about Arya comparing her to Damian Lillard, like NBA types, because I think there's an NBA playoff game on at the same time, and yeah, that kind of thing. So I knew Arya was up to something special, and by the time that scene had happened where Melisandre spotted her, gave her a little bit of a knowing look, by the time she had like scrapped through, there wasn't just that as well. There was that bit where the Hound was having a bit of an existential crisis because you know how much he hates fire, and then she's up on the rooftop just scrapping the hell out of people, and then they go off to go and help her because she gets a bit cornered and backed inside, and then she's in the library, and we've got this big focus on her being all sneaky. Like a lot of these hints as to all the skills that she's picked up over the years, culminating in that scene with Melisandre in one of the rooms in Winterfell. And she calls back something she said in season 3 when they first met about like brown eyes, green eyes, blue eyes, eyes that you'll shut forever, or it was a line something like that. There's a line about Beric doing what he had to do. The Lord of Light kept him around for a reason. The Hound, same deal. Everyone has a role to play, and then Arya just like runs out of the room. And I'm like, right, I think it's probably going to be her rather than Jon at that point. And so I sort of knew from the old spoilers, I didn't know for sure, but it was pretty obvious that Arya had done something climactic right at the end, and well, that's the only really climactic way that this thing was going to finish by that point. So I sort of knew what was going to happen, but I think even if I didn't, I would have guessed it. But yeah, bloody badass way to do it as well, with a knife trick, drop it, big shank in the stomach. Sneaky, sneaky, I like that.
Oh.
Where did she come from, though?
Flying.
Like, was she up in a weirwood tree, or did she just run?
She's Arya Stark, she's everywhere.
I guess that's the point. We're not meant to know. She's just so sneaky.
Yeah, the best question here is, how do you feel about the Night King being killed by Arya in episode 3? Like, what's just your takeaway, your learning, your gut feel around that situation?
2 of those, 2 gut feelings. One side of the coin is the fact that the Night King was killed by Arya, which I thought was brilliant and teased in a way that was pretty well set up and fantastically done, the way it happened with the knife trick. And there's like a video of her doing a similar thing in like training combat with Brienne. I think it was last season, where she loses her sword and then grabs the knife. Brienne goes to stop her arm, and then she flicks it to the other hand, and then jabs it up. So it's all like, it was all really well set up, and I think the way that Arya was able to do it in a way that combined all the skills that she's been learning over the years, like the stealth stuff, the hand-to-hand combat bits, and everything, all the teachers she's known along the way, like it all wrapped up perfectly, I thought there. But the fact that they killed the Night's King first stop, like I'm conflicted about that one, Doc. I'll admit it. I'm conflicted because this was the big bad that was set up through the whole series, and all the way through we've been told, like, don't worry about the petty human squabbling, don't worry about this, there's a bigger threat on the way, massive, environmental crisis is coming. We had that whole global warming comparison that was always pretty pertinent, and then all of a sudden it's like, simple little thing there is dead, and it's like global warming came and then just like lasted one day and then was back to normal again. It was, I don't know, I thought it was anticlimactic. Is that even, yeah, I don't know. What did you think about it? Because I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it a bit, because I'm really not quite sure where we go now, because Cersei's whole thing wasn't meant to be a priority. I don't know, it's almost like in a World Cup where the two best teams meet in the semi-finals, and it's like, well, we expected to win now because whoever wins this is going to win the final against whatever other muppet. But Cersei's obviously got a lot more to offer than that. But I'm just really weirded out by the way the show pivoted from what it's told us all along to be like, no, the battle with Cersei is the real one now.
Yeah, there's a couple of very broad, bigger picture ideas that kind of form the basis of my thinking around that, because I am very interested and intrigued as to whether more information around the Night's King, because he's still a mystery. Like, the whole thing is still a mystery.
Absolutely.
And so how does that weave together with the shenanigans and antics that are going to have to be the focus of the last 3 episodes with Cersei Lannister? Like, are we going to still, not necessarily a case of, is there more to it? But surely there's more information, and like I just think that some way it's going to weave, the two storylines are going to weave together through these last few episodes. And I think there's an interesting idea around how, the more metaphorical nature of the show, in that, yeah, for so long we've been told that the human interactions don't matter so much, or maybe it's just me, because I've said it a few times, human interactions don't matter so much when you've got this mystical element of the Night's King coming. But is it a case of like, that's true, but at the end of the day you still have to get back to reality? Like, you still have to handle the very human elements, because now it's gone from the mystical, magical world of Game of Thrones back into the Game of Thrones. Like, it's back into the political thing. Like, now it's back into the fight for the throne. So it's how those two ideas all come together that has me very interested. And yeah, I just think that there's more information around the Night's King that will come out that could be then influential in the war with Cersei. That then swings into ideas about Bran, because I think it was quite clear that Bran knew exactly what needed to happen, and he had kind of planned everything out. He knew how the war was going to do. You had his interaction with Theon, like, cheers for your help, Theon. Even though you haven't done it yet, cheers. Thank you.
If Theon waited 2 minutes, Arya would have killed the Night King and he would have lived, instead of running a kamikaze mission straight at him. Like, he wasn't to know that, but in hindsight, if he just waited 2 minutes.
But that's the thing, is that Bran's seen it all play out. So he knew what had to be done. He knew the only way
let him go.
the only way for Arya to come was for Theon to go and do what he had to do. And it's this whole idea of, that's a huge theme from the episode, is that whether you believe it or not, there is a line of thinking that everything happens for a reason. You are put into different situations for a reason, to ultimately end up in the place where magic happens, where miracles might happen. Like, if events in your life didn't happen as they had happened, you wouldn't be in the position to receive whatever, however you want to put it, like whether it's magic, manifestation, a miracle, or just, the event where you meet someone, that type of thing. Like, all the events that have happened in your life have put you in that position, and that's what Bran, I think, was orchestrating, and that is topped off with the minimal but extremely telling interaction between Bran and the Night's King. Like, he gave him a bit of a look. The Night's King looked at Bran like, what the fuck are you up to?
See, I thought that I was a little disappointed by that because I thought there would be more to it. There was that big, like, it was a very telling look between the two of them staring at each other, and Bran has said last week how he has this connection with him because he was touched in the dream that time, but the Night King doesn't talk is half the problem, so he didn't get to say anything that would like add to the levity of the moment. And yeah, I mean, his Kingsguard for one thing let him down badly. Like, just no one guarding for that Arya sneak attack, just no one. They all dropped the ball, and as soon as that one person dies, every one of them disappears. But I think you're right that they're like, I loved this episode. I thought it was fantastically done. I thought it was scary when it needed to be scary. The moment when he called up all the dead bodies again, you knew that was going to happen at some point. And when he did it, it worked so well because he had just walked through the flames doing a Daenerys trick on Daenerys herself. The bit at the start where the Dothrakis did their like Charge of the Light Brigade thing, and then and it showed them in bird's eye view almost, like from a distance, just the flames extinguishing to show exactly what was happening. And the White Walkers were always scarier in a small capacity. When they were off screen, when there was a threat that we hadn't seen, it's like facing your fears. Always makes things easier to cope with. But they had to bring them out in the open for this one. They had to deal with it and overcome it. So this is what we get. And I thought it was fantastically well done for the most part. Could have been a little bit brighter, but not as bad as some people have suggested. But I still left with these sort of mixed feelings because of what it does to the story moving forward. And this is why I don't want to be too I don't want to be too judgmental about those things. Like, I'm airing them out, but I still think that there's a very good chance that like Bran is still alive, right? He's the memory of the world. He knows a lot more about the Night King than he's let on, and Ned Stark died in season 1, and we're still getting ramifications of his life with Jon Snow finding out about his parentage and stuff like that. Like, just because the character is dead doesn't mean that their storyline is over necessarily. Just means that they're no longer participating in it. So I do think there could be a lot more to come from that mystical, spiritual side of things. But I also, I just can't help but feel this was my main problem with last season, and I think there's a little bit of this that just happened in this season. Or maybe not, but the potential for it maybe is more accurate. Just the more they've gone off book, the more they've lost that kind of the mythology of the show. It's become a little more functional, and how do we move a character from here to here, whereas things just used to happen when it was going off the book. Characters died almost at random, weird things happened, and it was pretty obvious that no one major who was seemed to be expendable, no one major died in this. There's a couple characters like Jorah who he could have died 2 seasons ago. He's been in and out. Hasn't been a relevant character for 4 seasons almost. I don't know, but he's Lyanna Mormont was a minor character, not a big deal. She got a send off worthy of that character. Theon again, could have just killed him off two seasons ago. He spent a lot of time just bouncing back and forth between Winterfell and his sister, just moping around and bringing everyone down. A lot of Beric as well was the other one. We knew he was going to die because he was on his 7th and final life, wasn't going to be resurrected again. Lord of Light kept him around for a reason. He served that purpose, and then he wasn't going to be able to resurrect him again, even though Melisandre was right there in front of him, someone who could have, but I guess it wouldn't have worked because not in the cards. So that they killed off characters, and they killed off characters that we know and enjoy. Ed was another one. Like, the Night's Watch has been irrelevant for at least the last season. They've just basically been an extension of Winterfell at this point, so it doesn't matter that any of them died. There wasn't anyone emotionally drastic. And I thought that was a little bit of a disappointment, because as much as I didn't want characters to die, but I was expecting it, and so when I didn't get what I expected, it was a bit, a little bit surprising for Game of Thrones. I just think that's another... The more we've gone off book, the more it's become a more typical TV show, rather than the completely like groundbreaking thing it was at the start. And I don't know, that's for better and for worse, because it is a TV show and they have to wrap it up somehow. And ultimately, we will eventually get those books, and I think at this point the books are going to be very different to what the show has become. But yeah, it's all a little bit odd, but I think it's unfair to judge future episodes until we've actually seen them. So I'm trying to hold back a little bit on what this does, on the implications of this episode, because the episode itself, top notch. And you know what? I think they're 3 from 3 this season. 1, 2, 3 knocked each one of them out of the park.
Yeah, and I'm kind of now, especially after the episode, I'm kind of looking at it more as like one big story split up into 6 segments, like one big journey split up into 6 segments instead of 6 different episodes, because you had the like different stages of a pre-battle preparation. You had characters coming together, then you had the preparation, then you had a whole hour and a half pretty much focused on the battle. And yeah, I think it's just a good way to look at it is this is a like one story. Season 8 is like one story split up into segments as opposed to split up into episodes, which just makes it a bit more easy to digest. And as a purely like a visual thing, it was like amazing. I was shitting my pants the whole time. You know, you never really knew what was going to happen. Like, even the fact that, yes, some of the hero characters didn't die, or maybe not as many people thought, you know, that's a surprise. That's something different. And I think there are a lot of those twists and turns where you may have had an idea what was going to happen, but you never really knew what was going to happen, and it was just full of suspense. It was full of action. And even the stuff like the darkness, which everyone kind of talked about, that's a device. That's there.
Yeah, it is.
That's there to set the tone, and just there was so much stuff like that, which just made it. Like, I think it was kind of groundbreaking. Like, you're never going to see anything like that, or even just like that kind of moment with so many people kind of watching it. The battle was pretty crazy. You've got so much stuff going on, you know, that led up to the battle. Visually, it was pretty like awesome. The way they did the different things in the battle, from the Dothraki riding in, like the way they set that up, and the way that the swords went out, so you realized that like everyone was about to get fucked up. All that stuff, and the dragons, like that shot of the dragons above the cloud with the moon, it's just like, oh, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So it was just like from that perspective, I think it was just a brilliant kind of hour and a bit just to sit down and be completely absorbed by it. And yeah, I think it just all comes back to what happened with the Night King and like how that sets things up now. And going back to what you're saying about Bran, like what role is Bran gonna play? Because with the way that, as I said before, that episode was just about Bran using his powers to put different things in place to ensure an outcome. So how does that then translate into this battle with Cersei? Because I have a feeling that like Bran was able to do that because the whole thing was the mythical, magical element of the show. Does that still apply to a battle in a situation with Cersei?
I would hope so, because the less they lean on the sort of mythological and spiritual side of the show, I think you take away the thing that, like, this is a fantasy show ultimately, isn't it? It's not meant to be like it's not like some ultra realistic like The Wire type thing. This is a fantasy show. There's a little bit where it's just a couple of things, but again, like, I don't want to dwell on that too much, because I think there's a lot more. There's 4 more hours of this thing, and there's a lot more that's going to happen, and I think that's not all going to be fighting Cersei. There's going to be a fair bit of backstory that gets filled in, over the next couple episodes, because I still want more from like Robert's Rebellion type information, Rhaegar and Lyanna. I want more of those Bran flashback type things. But yeah, there's a lot of loose ends that are still out there, and I think the Night's King remains a loose end because we never actually learned what his motivation was, other than Bran saying he just wants to destroy everything, and I just don't feel like that's a consistency within a George R.R. Martin story. He's always been about complicated characters. No one's purely good or purely evil, and I mean, maybe that doesn't apply to the non-human characters, I don't know, but there's still a lot more we need to find out, and I think we probably will, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. As to why they didn't all die, there is a perfectly logical reason, I guess, why everyone just didn't get overwhelmed, and that is that those White Walkers, they do a trick, they're pretty bloody useful, but their reincarnated zombie army is the opposite. It's completely useless, isn't it? Like, if you get them one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat, even Samwell Tarly's out there. To be fair, he did kill a White Walker once, but he's out there like just rattling bones and knocking them over. And obviously someone like Brienne, if she's in a well-positioned area, and she was, because between the fiery moat and the gates and whatever, they could only really come at her one or two at a time. She could do that for 3 or 4 hours on end, just knocking those fellas down. That's not hard, It should just be like bloody Kane Williamson at the crease, just forward defensive, back cut for 4, forward defensive, all day, bat all day, no problem at all. So it's actually like they're rubbish, eh? The only thing that they have going for them is that they're so overwhelming in numbers that they can just sacrifice like 100 of them by lying on the flames and building a zombie bridge to get over the top for the rest of them. So they've got that in their favor, but in terms of one-on-one combat, and if you're well positioned, and if you can do enough just to hold on until Arya comes up with the clutch shot right at the buzzer, no problem.
Well, so part of that is the kind of the conscious factor. The humans fighting the battle, they've got a brain, they can think, they can plan, whereas those whites are just pretty much robots who are designed strictly for killing, and they're not the smartest creatures going around, and they pretty much got to where they got purely based on numbers. Like,
yeah.
If you can just sacrifice a couple hundred soldiers to form a human bridge over a flaming fence, you're doing pretty well for numbers. Like, you're going alright for numbers. I do think that maybe, like, if we're analysing the battle, a little bit of complacency from the Night King. He's a dude who pretty much brought a storm, and if you can change the weather, and you've got a dragon that can assist in changing the weather, as well as blowing out some chilly fire. You're not gonna think about the details too much. You're not gonna think about. You probably don't even know who Arya is, and you're not gonna deploy your White Walkers if you don't need to. Like, if you've got 1 billion whites, not once are you gonna think about, hey, White Walkers, you might want to go and kill those heroes just to make this job a little bit easier. No, you're just going to think that your whites are going to do the job. What I think did become quite evident was maybe that the Night's King doesn't quite have the same powers as Bran, because he didn't appear to have gone that far into thinking about the whole process, whereas there are a couple of theories that I kind of agreed with prior to that, where the Night King was making things happen. He was kind of in the same situation as Bran, as a green seer, I think what is that?
Yeah, green sight, however you want to put it.
Yeah, whereas because the Night King lured the seven heroes north of the wall, which then lured Dany with her dragons north of the wall, and he then stole the dragon. And the location was the same location where they were, that little rock where it's very similar to where he's standing when the birds fly past and Bran's walking into the birds and he catches that moment. So there's a couple of ideas around the Night's King himself setting things in motion to have an outcome that he wants. But obviously that didn't really stretch out into the battle because he was completely outsmarted, outwitted, outplayed by Bran. Like Bran, just like he had a 10 out of 10 performance.
He was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. That's the thing, is that I guess this is kind of like what I was saying before about the Night King and all his lot were scarier when they were like a perceived threat and we didn't quite know what to expect of them, and when they actually faced them and fought them, they obviously it could have gone very different. A lot of people would have died in that war. It was pretty, like, I think the Dothraki race is now extinct from the start of that thing. But in terms of actually killing him, one little knife to the gut and the entire army collapsed. It was kind of easy, and I guess they just were a lot, maybe they weren't quite as powerful and overpowering as they were made out to be, so long as you could get that. I mean, that was the plan, wasn't it? Was that Bran would sit in the weirwood, under the weirwood tree and lure him in so that they could get at him, because they knew the only way to stop this army is to kill the Night King. And ultimately it was just all or nothing, wasn't it? Because it was either going to be complete and utter destruction, or they could kill him with a single stab to the gut. And as it happened, it was the latter.
As long as you got Dragonglass, as long as you got Valyrian Steel, like...
Well, do you think it's important that it was Valyrian Steel and not the Dragonglass? Because it feels a little bit... I mean, it's convenient, the blade specifically that was used, because originally it was that was the blade season 1, tried to kill Bran with, some random assassin. I think Tyrion might have had it for quite a while, and somehow Bran ended up back with it. He gave it to Arya, deliberately gave it to Arya, and she used it. But also, I guess we saw that the fire of the dragon did absolutely nothing to the Night King. So maybe the Dragonglass, we know it could have killed him, but maybe the fact that it was Valyrian Steel, like this is the level up version of Dragonglass. There's a lot of Dragonglass out there. They found the mine, they shipped it back to Winterfell in crates and crates and crates. And Valyrian Steel is just incredibly rare. There's only about 5 blades or something, so it's probably, maybe it is important that was what cast the crucial blow, was Valyrian Steel.
Well, definitely with how that was set up by Bran giving Arya the dagger. Like, he obviously knew then what needed to happen.
He's a step ahead, isn't he? It's a bit weird for the show when this one character just has that's why he can't talk that much. He has to be this quiet, reserved looking but not speaking much. Because if he talks, the show's over, because he just tells everyone what's going to happen. He's like Jerry spoiler alert.
It's a weird thing, because it's hard to talk about the episode without just getting into a whole like, oh my god, then this happened, and then this happened, like that. That doesn't make for great listening. And then so you can only really talk about these broad ideas involving the Night's King, which is kind of unique, because usually we've got all these different little nooks and crannies to dissect and roll through, whereas all those nooks and crannies are just like, Sam fought hard and somehow survived, and like,
yeah, nice job, like Jamie.
Or and just like Arya in the library where she was creeping around and all of that weird stuff. What about the that's one thing you can talk about, is the raising of the dead in the crypts. Everyone kind of predicted that the crypts wouldn't be as safe as they were thought to be, and then you kind of had. Some people seem to think that it was the whites breaking into the crypts from the outside.
That was definitely a mummy.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was but then it wasn't. It didn't Does that mean that all the major dead Starks, was that them who came out, or was it other people? Was that, even that's up in the air. Like, they didn't. Surely, if it was Ned Stark, they would
I have
make
a theory.
key point. What's your theory?
My theory is that those were definitely old Starks, because they're all Starks that are buried down there. But it's as simple as this. I think only the very oldest ones, who are probably beyond memory, were the ones that were escaping and getting out, because they're just in the oldest tombs. And I would imagine that Ned Stark, his headless body, maybe he wouldn't be able to be animated because he doesn't have a head. I'm not sure how it works. But little Rickon surely could have popped up and done some damage. But I'm guessing the logic behind that is that he was recently buried. The others were recently buried. Their tombs are very secure. Maybe they woke up, but they couldn't get out, is my theory. But having said that, I do think they half-assed that. Because I think there should have been some old Starks who rose up and, oh, Jesus, is that Ned? Whoa, what's going on here? I just think they missed a bit of a trick by not going with one of those, but I guess they couldn't kill everyone who was in there. Even then, only the plebs got murdered anyway, or the known characters hid in a corner and got away with it.
Yeah, is Ned Stark going to kill Sansa? Is that like...
Yeah, there we go. That would have been... I mean, when he showed little Lyanna Mormont and Dolores Ed both waking up with blue eyes, he never saw them again, because within 10 minutes, Night King had been stabbed and was dead. He was shattered.
Rejoice, Wildcard. The Night King's dead, and we now look forward to episode 4. And what on earth is going to happen in episode 4? Like, we know this Cersei Lannister character is still lurking, but other than that, no one really knows how it's going to play out, and that's the beautiful thing about
season 8. We still got
8.
Clegane Bowl. Sandor Clegane against his reanimated Gregor Clegane brother. I mean, I don't know if his brother actually has a memory of who he used to be, but there's still that possibility that the Mountain and the Hound could go head to head. Otherwise, why are they keeping them around? Same thing with Jaime and Cersei. There's still that. Even, Sansa dropped a line in the crypt there where right in front of Tyrion and Missandei and Varys and all of those people, where she just openly chucked out a little bit of disdain for Daenerys, pointed out that her path and Dany's path don't necessarily mix, and, that was a confident move. Maybe it was a move that she thought they were all going to die, so it didn't matter, but, there's something going on there as well. Didn't get all resolved because Dany never answered her question about what happens to the North in the future. There's still, lots of storylines, lots of loose ends, plenty going on.
A bit of niggle.
This is always what you want with bloody 4 more hours of this to wrap up. All the episodes are going to be just as long as this one from now on.
Give me more of that. That's us, Wildcard, for this Nichecast episode. We'll probably be back later in the week. I dropped a NRL discussion, New Zealand Warriors discussion episode, so check that out. That is the last episode of the Nichecast, and we'll be back later in the week to talk through some Kiwi sporting topics that tickle our fancy. And for you Game of Thrones freaks, we look forward to episode 4 and talking our way through that after it airs on the Monday. And if you're listening to this, you can probably read our written review of Game of Thrones, The Battle. We will be publishing that over the next 24 hours. So if you're listening to this, a good way to accompany it is to read about it, which will offer a different platform for us to roll through a few different ideas. Kia kaha. Talofa. Muchas gracias.